about face, left hand, right hand. Now different styles will do this differently. In some Korean styles, they actually pull it way down. Here's from the dragon school. You all still do that? Okay. Well, I come back, I pull the foot up, but I don't pull my hand down, so I still come back up, strike. Okay, now, come up, clear, punch, scoop, punch. Again, you'll see some styles that actually go, and they turn into a stance here. We don't, we just, boom. I still, however, do a fold for my pseudo, my knife hand, low.
Dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much for tuning to our program. Today we have a very special guest. The guest is also happen to be my martial art instructor. So we'll let him introduce himself a little bit later after we introduce our programs. So today we are going to discuss a very critical element of our daily life, which is self-defense. So from childhood to the senior age, we always need some kind of self-defense skill sets to protect us, to protect our family, to protect our community, and of course our country if needed. So in that regard, we would like to let Dr. Yates to introduce himself for us. Please introduce yourself, Dr. Yates.
All right, well, my name is Keith Yates. I have been teaching the martial arts for 55 years. I made a black belt when I was a 13-year-old kid. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. I started when I was 13. I made a black belt at 17 in 1968. At that time, I was one of the youngest black belts in the state because back in the 60s, there weren't very many kids doing martial arts. Interestingly, today, there's lots of kids doing martial arts. In fact, it's almost as popular as soccer. But I've been teaching at the YMCA for 30 plus years and taught at several commercial karate schools, had a competitive career, won some fighting trophies back in the 60s and 70s. And the rank that I hold right now is a 10th degree black belt, which is the highest you can get. Again, that's due to the fact that I've been around for so many years. So I'm still teaching, one of the few 10th degrees that are still actively teaching these days because a lot of the guys that old have retired.
Oh yeah, that is actually very interesting. For some of us, it is a little bit unfamiliar with the degree in the black belts. So if you can briefly educate us, what does the first degree to 10th degree means, please?
Well, sure. A lot of people think that if you're a black belt in the martial arts, you're an expert. But technically, the black belt just means that you've begun your journey of learning. And it takes maybe 3, 4, 5 years to make a black belt. And then in our system, you have to wait a couple of years and test again for 2nd degree and then 3rd degree. And eventually, once you get to the 5th degree, it's called a master level instructor. Although personally, I don't like the term Master Yates. My students just call me Mr. Yates. And then from 5th degree up through 10th, it's more considered honorary than anything else based on your time and contribution. So I've written a number of books and magazine articles and sponsored tournaments and have close to 130 black belts that I've promoted. Hopefully it will be you and your kids too one day. So that's how the ranking system goes. And there are different martial arts. We do a combination of karate and Tae Kwon Do. But there's Kung Fu from China and Judo, where you throw people up in the air and so forth. So most Americans tend to meld things together. So when you go to a karate school in America, they generally do a little bit of karate, a little bit of Tae Kwon Do, a little bit of Judo, something like that.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's very informative for general audience to know. Normally, we're like somebody has a black belt, maybe he's in top in the rank in all martial arts. So thank you very much for that. Now, before we, start our questioning, I would also want to ask you if you could briefly touch base on your education related to the seminary, because we're going to be talking about ethics and religion. So kindly, please.
Well, my undergraduate degree was actually in art. So for a number of years, I taught graphic design at SMU, where I graduated. Went to work at Dallas Theological Seminary, which is a Protestant seminary. Worked actually in the graphic design department, and then decided while I was there, you got to break in tuition if you worked there. So I went ahead and started working on a master's degree. So I have a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies. Interestingly, when I was at the seminary, some of the other people, I don't go around telling people that I'm a karate instructor, but actually some of the seminary students were my karate students as well. So it kind of got around on campus, and people would come to me and say, well, how can you be a Christian and learn martial arts, learn how to kick and punch and hurt people? So I ended up doing my thesis on the spiritual aspects of the martial arts. Interesting, a lot of Christian believers, at least, have more of an issue with the Buddhism and meditation part that they think that the martial arts are involved with rather than self-defense. And maybe because we're in Texas, a lot of people don't have a problem with carrying a gun around with them to defend themselves and their family. Personally, I'm not a big gun guy. I own one gun that I actually bought at the beginning of the pandemic. But for most of my life, I've never had anything to do with firearms. So my self-defense training and teaching is based purely on physical personal defense, kicking and punching and anti-bullying and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's great to know that, and that can lead to our first questions that many people might wonder the ethics, the purpose for a general audience to learn self-defense. So, if we ask you what can be ethical perspective of self-defense, how do you answer that?
Well, I think uh, our creator gave us an innate sense of self-preservation. You've heard of the flight or fight syndrome. So if you're facing danger, your heart rate increases and you're ready to either fight or run. I always advise running rather than fighting, but I think that's just something innate in us as humans that our creator has given us. Um, and I think it's a natural tendency not only to want to protect yourself, but certainly your loved ones. And I think there are several scriptures in the Christian Bible talking about protecting your loved ones, protecting your family. So I really think that it's there's nothing unbiblical, let's put it that way, about trying to protect yourself and learning how to protect yourself and your loved ones. And that's why I've taught at the YMCA for so many years, because I teach a lot of children anti-bullying techniques. And in fact, in a few months, I'm going to be teaching. I live up in a retirement community right now, since I'm old and I'm retired. And I'll be teaching a self-defense class for senior citizens in a couple of months. And so I just think it's very important for people to know how to protect themselves, not only in case of actual confrontation, but just mentally and psychologically, that you feel a little more comfortable knowing how to protect yourself. So I think that's something that we all need, and I don't see any kind of problem with my faith in teaching and advocating for that.
Yeah, yeah, I am also in interfaith activities. I meet with Christian and Jewish and different dialogues from religious perspective, and in from Islamic perspective, it is also highly encouraged followers to learn defensive techniques. Our Prophet encouraged us to learn like horse riding, playing how to handle swords or arrow on bow type of techniques. So in case of emergency or other situation arises, a person can defend himself or herself or the family. And then Quran also elaborate, if somebody come and attack you or oppress you, you have the right to defend yourself and your community and your land, whatever you are getting oppressed of. So from that sense, Islam and Christianity, we align from ethical perspective the need of self-defense. So that's very true from both religious perspective. So
Yeah,
that
I
leads.
think so. And I think you probably heard people say, well, didn't Jesus say to turn the other cheek? So you're not supposed to fight back. And I think people take that verse out of context because the verse actually says where Jesus said, if somebody strikes you on the right cheek, turn your other cheek. But this, for instance, is my right cheek. So if another person is right-handed, it would be like a backhanded slap. So it's an insult. It's not that somebody's trying to like punch you and take your wallet or kidnap you. It's somebody insulting you. So if somebody insults you, you're not supposed to insult the other person back. So retribution, revenge, is not for people of faith, but certainly defending yourself and your household is certainly permissible.
Yes, yes. Sometimes when I'm in also in dialogue with other people, they say, okay, forgiveness, because we are encouraged to be humble, to forgiving. They say, okay, if somebody, slap you or accidentally, hurt you, we can understand that there is a forgiveness there. But if somebody come and try to snatch your wallet or your property, are you going to forgive them or are you going to defend them, hold into your possession? That's where I think some people might misunderstand, like what is the forgiveness and what is the right to defend, or a right to protect our properties or assets. I think that's where some confusion arises. So
Oh yeah, for
regardless.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, whatever the situation, if it is accidental, we're not going to slap somebody because they accidentally fall on us, or they were passing by and hit by their elbow. This is accidental, we can understand that. But if somebody come and face to face try to attack us, I mean, is there a forgiveness situation, or this is a time to show up, you stand and fight for the justice, right? We need to fight for the justice and freedom, and that's where the self-defense will apply.
Well, yeah, I think so. And I think it's really good for, like I said, whether you're a senior citizen or an elementary school kid, to learn to defend yourself because that gives you that sense of self-confidence. I often tell my young students that bullies have low self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves, and that's why they make fun of other kids to make themselves feel more important. And so if you understand where the bully is coming from, you can kind of understand. I want to say him, but sometimes bullies are girls too. You understand their mentality, and it enables you to stand up. They're not making fun of you because they hate you, but they almost hate themselves. But still, you've got to be able to defend yourself. I tell little kids and adults too that we have a saying called pre-fight, PRE, which means prevention, recognition, and escape. So you want to prevent something bad from happening to you. So if you're an adult, for example, don't leave your car unlocked when you go to the grocery store or something. You're just inviting someone to come in and break into your car. Recognition is noticing your surroundings. So I always teach little kids to be aware of what's going on around them. These days, when everybody's on their phone, sometimes it's easy to just ignore the outside world, but I want my students to be aware. And then the E in PRE is escape, and it's okay to run away. Sometimes kids feel like, they don't want to be cowards or called chicken or something, but it's okay to back off and to run away and say, hey, I don't want to fight. And then if you've gone through the steps of prevention, recognition, and escape, then maybe you have to defend yourself, with something physical. But you want to do those other steps first. So if someone comes up and calls you a name, you don't say, now I'm going to use my karate, I can punch him in the nose. That's the time to back off and say, hey, stop picking on me. And that's what I tell kids to do. In fact, we have a technique where you put your hands up like this and say, leave me alone. And I tell kids to yell help sometimes if they're in a schoolyard and an adult comes up to them and you talk to the kids and say, you know, you're not supposed to talk to strangers, but kids sometimes forget that. And so if they feel like they're in danger, they can just start yelling, help, help, he's not my dad, help me. And that will attract attention from other well-meaning adults that may be able to help protect you. So those are all the kind of things that I teach kids. And again, kids all the way up to seniors need those kinds of lessons.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree with those suggestions. Definitely. I would also add that instead of help, some of my self defense classes previously, they encouraged also to yell fire, because
Yes.
sometimes when somebody say help, other people might be a little bit hesitant to go and see what's going on. They might think they will be also the victim of the incidents that's happening. But if somebody yell fire, and that gets everyone's attention, and that bring more people, or more resources toward the incident. I don't know if you had experience help versus fire yelling.
Yeah, I like both of those. And again, years ago, I had a police officer come and help us teach class. And he's the one that told me, have the kids yell, help, he's not my dad. Because sometimes if you're just yelling, help, help, maybe it's two kids just in a little bit of a tussle. But if you or I, as parents, heard some kid yelling, he's not my dad, he's not my dad, we would certainly pay attention to that. So anything that you can yell to gain the attention of other people. And, you hate to create in somebody's mind a feeling of insecurity, but it's better to be safe than sorry. And
Mhm.
so in class, sometimes we run through little scenarios. If someone comes up to you, put your hands up and say stop, and then run away, and never be afraid to exit the situation. And so I think that's just good, again, psychologically. So if you know you can take care of yourself and you kind of have a handle on things, you'll be much more confident. And that's not only in the playground, but maybe in your workplace or going to the store. You just feel more confident because you know how to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely, very good advice for us. Okay, that leads to our next question. That is, people who are over dependent on firearms. We touchly based it at the beginning with, they're like, we live in Texas, we can carry firearms, no need for us to learn self-defense. Matter of fact, when I was growing up, some of my friends, they stopped, martial art lessons or other self-defense techniques, and they were like, hey, why should I try to work hard? I can cheat. Showing somebody firearms, or like, if somebody knows that I have firearms, they will not fool with me. They will not come and attack me. What would you advise them?
Well, again, I'm not really a big gun person, but I will say that if you're going to have a gun in your home or on your person, you have to be trained, because the average person has a false sense of security if you have a firearm. And so imagine somebody attacking you and you say, oh, stop, I'm going to shoot you. And the bad guy, who has much more experience than you do in physical confrontations, he can see in your face that you're too scared. And so he'll take it away from you and perhaps use it against you. So if you're going to carry firearms, you really have to be trained. And I've gone through some firearm training where police officers or military personnel will say that if you pull out a gun, you have to be willing to actually use it. And if you're not willing to use it, if there's that sense of fear, the good fallback is to learn some physical self-defense, because as they say, you don't run out of ammunition with just your bare hands and feet. We can always punch or kick, um, unless you get your arm cut off or something like that. So I really believe in firearm training. If you're going to carry a gun, you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, and then also we hear in the news media or other place like 6-year-old accidentally shooting their own family or
Right.
themselves. So there are a lot of high risk, fatality risk involved, only depending on the firearms. And and also I'm also in the mental health training program, and we see that in the United States alone, based on some solid research, it shows like 24% of the adult seniors who commit suicide, they use firearms of their own that they possess.
Right.
So, and also in the youth and teenagers who commit suicide, they sometimes access their parents firearms and use it unethical purposes. So there are many cons, negative impact of firearms, depending on it, versus learning, our natural body is, as a weapon to protect us, is there are less disadvantage of it. However, if somebody says, we are too old, we cannot learn it, or I might break my knee or hand, try to practice this in old ages, what would you say to them? How would you ask them that this is not as dangerous as you think? This martial art, anybody at any age can learn these techniques. If you can provide them any suggestion.
Well, interestingly, like I said, a couple years ago, we moved into a retirement community. Um, and I'm currently teaching Tai Chi to people, which is a big difference than teaching Tae Kwon Do to 6-year-olds and teaching Tai Chi to 80-year-olds. But as we do the Tai Chi movements, I share with them that these are actually martial arts moves. And so when you do a technique where you reach out with your hand, you could be hitting somebody in the face. And I know that my seniors appreciate that. But again, Tai Chi is a martial art, and you can do it slowly and not hurt yourself. But I still think it's valuable to learn some actual self-defense techniques. And so I throw that into my Tai Chi classes, and I'll be doing it when we start doing our self-defense classes up here. But yeah, you don't have to be able to kick and jump up in the air like you see in the movies to learn how to defend yourself. In fact, a good instructor is not going to be teaching kicks any higher than like groin level. I teach in self-defense, just kick to somebody's knee or kick to the groin. But all the kicks that you see in the movies and so forth are not really effective self-defense techniques if you're out in the street, and you're wearing dress shoes on a wet concrete parking lot or something like that. You don't want to be doing a bunch of high kicks anyway. So self-defense training doesn't have to be physically demanding. You just need to learn some basic techniques. And sometimes I tell students that what we learn in the martial arts is you learn where to hit and how to hit. So you learn some targeting and you learn some proper ways to hold your hands and your feet. And you've gone a long way in learning how to protect yourself. Now, if a gang of Hell's Angels jumped out with knives and guns, even I would be in trouble. But most self-defense situations are not that drastic. It's somebody just wanting to grab your purse or, um, like I said, a bully at school. And incidentally, if someone came up and wanted my wallet or a purse from a woman, let them have it, because nothing you can carry on your person, your wallet or your purse, is worth your life. So don't resist if someone wants to grab your wallet. Let them have it.
Yeah, of course. We need to use our judgment. What is more valuable? Is it valuable to go after something which we can replace versus, taking a hit, or, cutting ourselves, which the other person might be possessing. So we have to use our judgment to make a decision. And I think you have articulated well that, sometimes it is better to run, or, let it go. Then we can always come back to it, or file a report to it, and that will come back to us. And then again, if we want to find any kind of disadvantage, if you were to think independently, somebody will pick what are the disadvantage of martial art? Does something comes in your mind? The disadvantages.
A disadvantage of training in the martial arts?
Yeah.
Um, well, various arts and various instructors have different approaches. So like I said, if you're an older person, you may not want to do something like judo, where they pick you up and toss you across the room. For little kids, you don't want to do something that's really technical. Aikido is a martial art that's very technical, involving body positioning and how to grab somebody. It's almost too complicated for little kids. So if you want to learn the martial arts, you need to find an instructor who will tailor the instructions to basically the student. And so I teach kids differently than I teach adults, and I teach Tai Chi differently than I teach Tae Kwon Do. And of course, I've got a lot of experience, but for people that are interested in learning the martial arts, I would say to talk to the instructor. And going back to our whole idea of ethics and self-defense too, I would quiz the instructor on what is your philosophy of martial arts. Some martial arts instructors say, well, I'm like a Zen Buddhist where I have to sit and meditate. And that's a whole other thing that I developed from my Christian perspective, that I don't get into Zen meditation or anything like that. And so I would talk to the instructor to make sure that you're not only comfortable with the way he teaches physical techniques, but even beyond that, what's his philosophy of life and faith. If you're a person of faith, you want to be training with somebody that shares your opinion of ethics and the martial arts and self-defense, like we've been talking about.
Yeah, that perfectly makes sense. And also from parents' perspective, I have seen some parents, they are eager to give their children to this kind of programs, hoping that they will learn restraint or disciplining themselves. That way, they are more better behaved at home, and then also, professionally behaved at work or at school or in the playground. But sometimes that might not work 100% based on their expectation. So as an instructor, how would you tell to your younger students, as far as learning this technique and using it to self restraining or self disciplining himself or herself, so that they can wake up on time, they can perform their task on time, because ultimately this is skill sets that helps them to make a decision, critical decision. Because when somebody is learning this technique, they know when to kick, how to kick, when to punch, how to protect themselves, and also like you said, when to escape. Similar way, when they need to wake up on time, do their homework on time, perform better on their homework and quizzes, and obey their parents and seniors and other teachers. What are your philosophy or methodology as far as teaching the youngsters?
Well, I think it's it's interesting. I think all sports teach discipline. So whether a kid is learning track and field or soccer or martial arts, certainly if you want to succeed, that includes a lot of hard work and discipline on your part. And martial arts even takes it a step further. So beyond just the hard work and the discipline, there's a sense of respect. Maybe people have seen how the students bow to the black belt instructor. And sometimes I run into people that say, well, I don't bow to anybody. I just bow to my God. But it's a cultural thing in Asian culture and Far East Asian culture where you bow. And sometimes I'll tell my kids that in China or Japan, when the parent tells the kid, it's time to do your homework, they bow and say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And I say, if you did that to your parents here in Texas, your parent would probably faint. But I want my kids to be able to say sir and ma'am and show respect to all adults, but especially to the parents. And that's an integral part of the martial arts. And so if you come to some of my classes, as you have, you know that all the students call me sir. And if there's a lady instructor, they call her ma'am, yes, ma'am. And so you're developing in that level of respect, along with the self-confidence and the self-discipline that comes in the martial arts. So I think martial arts are a great way to teach the principles of respect and discipline and hard work. And certainly you can learn that in other areas of life too. But the martial arts happens to be a fun way to do it. So I really think that all kids should at least be exposed to it. And I realize not everybody's going to be a black belt one day, but the kind of self-confidence and respect and discipline you gain from martial arts training is certainly valuable, I think. That's why I've been doing it for so long.
No, that's perfectly makes sense. And I would also want to share that one time I have asked the parents if they want to give their son to a martial art, and they literally told me that because of this bow, practice, they don't want to give their son to the martial arts. Unfortunately, I think misunderstanding. There is some misconcept because for example, from Islamic perspective, nobody should bow from a worship perspective to
Right.
anybody else except the Almighty God. That's clear. However, in Quran we find that God Almighty talks when He created Adam, first human, angels to bow him. So the concept in here, bowing, is not angel going to bow to Adam to worship him, rather showing respect. Like saying, peace be upon you, right?
Right.
Whether it's verbal or in Asian culture, they would do it physically as a symbol of respect and greetings. That's allowed, but it's not like worshiping. That's two different concepts. I think sometimes because of the cultural differences, sometimes somebody shows you this finger versus that finger or this way, it could mean different depending on the culture.
Right.
Yeah, so similar way. So we have to understand the background of the teaching, where it is coming from, and what exactly it represent before we can interpret it. So that makes sense. And I think if our audience understand the purpose of our this conversation, they will understand a little bit more background into it. So I think we are almost running out of time. If you have any final recommendation for the parents or anyone else who doesn't have any knowledge about martial art, what would you say in few sentences?
Well, let me just go back to the point of talking to the instructor and finding out what their philosophy of not only physical training is, but their philosophy about discipline and respect. Sometimes, if you remember the old Karate Kid movie from the 80s, the original one, where they had the bad sensei, who taught his students to go out and hurt the other team in order to win. And that's not really in the spirit of the martial arts at all. But admittedly, some instructors are like that. They're really hardcore. Maybe they used to be in the military or something. They teach little kids like they're supposed to be Navy SEALs. So talk to the instructor, but also talk to parents. Talk to some of the other parents and say, hey, what do you think about this school? How's Mrs. So-and-so teaching? And if the parents are excited about having their kids in the class, then you should probably be encouraged that this is the right kind of class for you too. And again, there's so many different styles. Just check out something that's close to you. Some are very expensive, some are cheaper. So if you go to the YMCA or a community rec center, you probably won't pay as much. And still, there are very good instructors all over the place. So just take your time and talk to people and check it out. Most schools will let you take a few lessons before they want you to pay any more money. And so you can decide if it's something that's going to be right for you and for your children.
Oh, that's very helpful. And one final suggestion. I was actually sharing my thoughts with one of the YMCA employee, and luckily he shared. I said, "Have you learned martial art or taekwondo?" He said, "No, my mom didn't want to pay for it. That's why I didn't learn." So, are there any kind of scholarship for financially challenged families, which YMCA or other nonprofit will sponsor them to learn?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. I know the YMCA where I teach has a scholarship program. So for families that maybe can't afford
Mhm.
lessons, the Y has a scholarship program. So those are really good avenues to examine too, for sure.
Oh, okay. That's great to know. And I will share that with other people, and people who are watching, they would be able to inquire more so that if they have intention to give, or they themselves want to learn, there are, ways for them to pay for the fee. And I really
Right.
appreciate and thank you very much for sharing your knowledge. May God Almighty bless you teaching skills and keep you in good health so we can learn from you. Thank you very much, Mr. Yates.
Thank you. Back to you.